Well, we probably all heard that phrase at one point or the other when we were in AA meetings for former cult members or people who were still actively in AA, like some of my subscribers have been talking about, but just haven't either made a break with it yet, or the people who are there against their own will by court order, which I could do an entire video on why that's so unconstitutional to order people into a cult religion. I don't think in today's society, if you heard about people being court ordered to go to church, that there would be a public outcry from secular humanist organizations and atheist organizations all over. Yet everybody kind of remains silent when it comes to AA. As a matter of fact, I was looking at something from the Omridge papers, but I don't have it all printed out in front of me, where AA routinely throws money against people who criticize it in an attempt to ruin them. There was a couple of different cases. In fact, there was a case in the Orange papers where they said the Ann Landers even went after this person that pointed out that a lot of people with severe problems to alcohol could definitely end up moderating again. Myself, I don't choose to moderate because moderation, I just don't feel like fooling with it any longer. I've had so many bad experiences over the years with drinking that I'm just more content without it. But there is a phrase that you hear in the rooms quite a lot, and I was thinking about it when I started talking on this video today, and that's don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. And I actually, I don't think I ever repeated that when I was called on in AA meetings. I don't think I ever tried to tell new people that. I remember my big thing when I was a dedicated cult member was, you just got to take this thing one day at a time. You just got to take this thing one day at a time. If you can make it through to today without a drink, you made it. I really cringe when I think about some of the things I used to say in those meetings, but it never occurred to me that after hearing that, well, I heard it for 11 years, and I think I kind of came to a conclusion. There was no miracle waiting to happen. There was no miracle going to happen. But an even more interesting thing is, I didn't see any evidence of any miracles sitting around me in those rooms. I didn't see any evidence that there was anything spiritual, that there was, or spiritual is such an abstract, vague, meaningless term that I've come to really despise it. In fact, I don't like using it. Whenever I've ever asked an AA cult member what the word spiritual means, I generally get, when you break it all down, in spite of all the horseshit slogans that they'll throw at you, basically just a feeling. And really and truly, we have data that describes what feelings are. We have evidence through scans, CAT scans, and neuroscans as to what part of the brains are activated when you feel a certain way. So to call something where you're just feeling kind of transcendent, for lack of a better term, as being spiritual, it's just meaningless. In fact, it's if I hadn't been bullied with spirituality so much in AA by people who obviously were the most vile of people around, it probably would not rankle me as much as it does. But I really do not like that word. I don't even use it in my vocabulary to describe anything that I kind of find interesting or puzzling or transcendent or anything else. And I just refer to it as what I think it is, a feeling. But it occurred to me that when I first left AA, when I walked away from it, I was in a very, very bad place. I had gone through more hell than I could even hope to put together in a book. And I have entertained the idea of trying to write a book, but I would have so much to cover that I wouldn't even know where to start. But after a period of time away from AA, it occurred to me that without the desperation, without the being beat up by addiction, without the fact that I was in a grip of a really terrifying, powerful addiction that I could not seem to shake, that I didn't really have one single good reason to believe any of the claims that they were making in AA. There was nothing that they could demonstrate to prove to me that there was any kind of miracle taking place. There was nothing they could prove to me that demonstrated, or anything that I could see with my own two eyes, that even hinted that there was anything miraculous taking place. All these old timers and gurus and people that were just addicted to being playing some big shot in an AA meeting, they lived empty, miserable, horrible lives. But one of the interesting things that I had happen last week was a situation where I had a little bit of a back and forth with someone before I got rid of them. I got tired of it because they were going to keep reiterating the same ad hominem character attacks to me over and over, but they kept saying, You're addicted to pride, you're addicted to rage, you're addicted to anger. Well, I hate to break it to you, but there's no evidence that you can actually get addicted to emotions, and there's no evidence that you can choose to be addicted to an emotion. It's not like you wake up out of bed in the morning, early in the morning, and you say, you know what, I'm going to choose to be angry today, or I'm going to choose to be serene today. Let's see, which emotion do I want to play with here? Let me pick it out on the little emotion box that I got here, where it's all filed away in the filing cabinet. Man, I think I don't want sadness today, so I'll put it back in the filing cabinet. People don't get to choose how they feel about a situation, but if you wanted to say that I am totally and completely outraged by the fact that this malignant cult permeates 12-step treatment, then you would have a very good, strong case to be made. That is why I do this. But what I found most interesting is, and I'm not going to go back and forth, but all that was said was, I said I was willing to provide evidence. I was willing to provide evidence to back up all the things I say about on here. I've taken apart the big book with its logical fallacies. I've taken apart the history of AA with all of its lies and its made-up stories. I've taken apart what I've personally seen and the testimonies of what hundreds of people who, not just on this video, but everywhere on online postings and everything else have seen and experienced. And yet, with a mountain of evidence facing someone, they were willing to say that I was just addicted to rage and hatred and anger, and I just had a bad experience with AA, which is generally what every pro-AA commenter does. They start by attacking the character. They start by appealing to your motivations. They start by trying to say that you just have a resentment against Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, I do. I have a major resentment against it, because not only does it lie with qualifiers for the people who fail, but it blames them for failing. But when I say lie with qualifiers, if you sincerely wanted it, or for those who thoroughly followed the path, they put it all into place where it's automatically set up to always be your fault if it doesn't work. But the one thing that kind of struck me to talk about this week, because I've been really busy and I didn't quite have a topic prepared, is that if something was true, and if something was miraculous, and if something was really as efficient and as life-altering as Alcoholics Anonymous claims to be, why is it so afraid of questions? Why is it so afraid of criticism? Why is it so afraid of the truth being told about it? Why is it, when I was an AA member, I remember many times in meetings when I had honest-to-God questions. Honest questions. I wasn't trying to actually trip people up and trap them like I would probably do now by pointing out their logical fallacies and their mistakes. But when I was asking sincere questions about, but I don't understand this part in the book where it says this and it says that, 99% of the time I was told, well, it's because you're not willing. Well, it's because you're not willing to go to any length. I was met with scorn and hatred and rage and mockery and everything else, which seems kind of bizarre, and it's not so bizarre when you see AA for what it is, which is a religious cult, in that anything else in life I've ever approached or anything else I've ever learned, whether it's through a new job or whether it's through whatever, most of the time, if you ask somebody a question about something, they could explain it. If there was something that I had, some method or some approach I had to something, be it playing a musical instrument or troubleshooting a computer, if you ask me, well, how do you do that? How is that done? I wouldn't have any problem shrugging and saying, well, actually, it's not that hard. It's pretty easy, actually. Let me show you. If something is true, then it shouldn't worry about criticism. It should look at criticism as, I can't believe that they're being critical of this when I can demonstrate this so obviously, rather than retort to vehement anger and rage and character assassination when someone has questions about it. If you've ever noticed in AA meetings, when you have a problem or when you hear something, you're not ever actually given any real advice. You're not given any advice as to how to work a step or how you're supposed to do a step or approach a step. You're just told, oh, when I worked the step, this happened. And okay, if you work the step and it don't happen, then you're told it's all your fault because you didn't do it correctly. When you ask how to do it correctly, you're never given a straight answer. AA is afraid of questions. AA is afraid of being examined and looked at. It loves to tout out its generalizations and its broad sweeping assertions that it's saved millions of people and has, changed millions of lives. And you have those bullying old-timers that'll say something like, this program saved my life, and I will not have people talk bad about it. Well, to be honest, when a program has a massive failure rate on the level that AA does, and when a program has a massive attrition rate, a massive churn and turnover rate like it does, there is a case to be made that AA did not save your life at all. They do their little special pleading fallacy, and they'll tell you that they worked the program like the other people didn't. But when you got a situation where you got, say, I'm going to just make a number up. Let's say you got 5,000 people who enter AA throughout the United States in 1 year. I'm making this number up now. And all but 2 of them stick around past 6 months. There's a case to be made that the 2 who are sticking around are not sticking around because AA is a miraculous program that saved everybody's life when you got 4,995 failures. AA, of course, does the qualifier thing, the special pleading thing. Well, it didn't work because they just didn't want it bad enough. It didn't work because they just weren't in enough pain. It didn't work because they weren't willing. They weren't willing to do the work. They didn't go to enough meetings. They didn't read the book enough. They didn't really have a sponsor. They didn't do a 5th step. Time after time after time in AA, I would see people come in sincere about the entire thing, giving their all to the program, and when they relapsed again, they were expected to come up with some reason as to why it didn't work. They were supposed to say something like, well, I did leave something out in my 4th step. Well, I did start isolating. Well, I did do this. I did do that. But you could never say, actually, I gave it my all, and I still want to drink. You couldn't look at it like that, and you would never get honest feedback about, well, there's a lot of people who come in here and do all this, and it really doesn't work, and there are other ways to do it. You'll never get that. You'll always be told it's you who's doing it wrong. Now, of course, they conveniently have the little things they can trot out when they're put on the spot. If you put them on the spot with the fact that it doesn't work, they'll say, well, no, our big book says it's suggestive only. Yeah, the same literature that says you sign your own death warrant for not doing it. The same literature that says you have to conform or else. The same one that says, with us, it's just like that. It makes all these bold declarations and assertions, but when you put them on the spot, when you call them out for this shit, then they'll say, whoa, it's a suggestion only. You don't tell newcomers that when they're struggling. You don't tell somebody who just got 30 days and then slipped up and went to a liquor store and bought him a pint the night before and says, look, guys, I slipped. I'm sorry. You'll never hear in a meeting, well, maybe it's just not for you. Maybe there's other ways. Maybe you can moderate. Maybe you should look at this. Maybe you should look at that. That's not what you'll be told. You know it and I know it. If you've had any experience in AA and you're watching this, you'll be told, well, what did you do wrong? I mean, were you going to meetings? Were you calling a sponsor? Were you praying? Well, now, were you really praying? You weren't really praying the right prayer in the right way. You were supposed to pray standing this way with your head sideways. If you weren't willing, it wouldn't have happened to you. You're blamed. You're entirely blamed. And the way that this malignant religious cult is accepted in society, a part of you will accept that blame. I know I did in my case. When I say you, kind of speaking from my own personal experience here. But one of the most interesting things that I found, and I've heard it a few times from AA trolls on this channel and in other places and in meetings, is they'll say, well, if it even saves one person, it's good. Okay, you can't argue that. If it saves one person, it's good. Actually, I can make an argument against that. That's one of the funny things about these AA absolutist clowns. They don't realize that, no, there's an actual universe outside of AA meetings where you're not the sole authority on everything, and people can respond accordingly to what you're saying. Picture, if you will, if I set up a tent somewhere and I set up my own quack medical practice of some sort where I'm not really a licensed doctor and I'm kind of breaking some rules to get around the state because I'm not calling myself a doctor, and I'm using all kinds of outdated medieval medicine to treat people, and all these people come to me and I say, now you don't need x-rays and you don't need CAT scans and you don't need antibiotics and you don't need to set a broken bone. You don't need to do any of those things because a long time ago, back in the Middle Ages, we didn't do any of those things. One thing they did do in the Middle Ages, by the way, was check urine and blood. I didn't realize that till I read a book about it. But yeah, you didn't really have what you'd call medieval doctors. I forgot what they were called. They weren't like House of the Dragon called maesters or some shit like that. It wasn't like that. But they did examine people's piss. So if I said, well, I'm going to treat everybody and just examine their urine, and that's all that's needed, because back then, when the church ruled everything, it was better back then, and that's just the way I'm going to do it. Now, let's say I go to treat 10,000 patients, and about 8,000 of them all die, and 2,000 of them survive. And I say, whoa, it saved one person, didn't it? If it saved one person, that means God is on my side. Now, if you have a massive failure rate that's out of proportion to the success rate, then you cannot make an argument that if it saves one person, it's doing a world of good. You could make an argument, you could make a claim that because so many people slip through the cracks of the system and end up drinking themselves to death or worse, feeling like they've done something wrong, feeling like they've committed some kind of crime against AA, that it's actually detrimental to a large majority of people. There is no case of this thing saved my life and you will not talk bad about it. No, fuck you. This thing has killed a lot of people and I will talk bad about it. I will point out the logical fallacies. I will point out the horrifying statistics, the real numbers, George Valiant's study that showed an increase in suicide and binge drinking and everything else. But my one big question in this video that I didn't really know if I was going to get a chance to make this week or not is, what are you so afraid of being questioned for? I mean, there's never been a situation that I can think of, or an institution I can think of outside of religion, that refuses questions in the way AA does. Well, this thing saved my life, and if you say anything, I'm going to become violent. No, if there was a method that I feel saved my life, I wouldn't become angry and hostile if somebody wanted to question it or put it under a microscope or whatever it was. There was a treatment a long time ago. If you grew up in the 80s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those days when you're home from school and you got those nasty crackers and 7-Up and The Price is Right is on television after Phil Donahue and you're in bed, confined, and you got the thermometer right beside the bed with the glass of stale-ass water because you only use it to take the antibiotics with. I remember way back when I was a young kid like that, I had this horrible chest cold. I mean, I was hacking up a lung, lung a minute. It felt like I was just coughing myself to death. And my grandmother, she took a towel and placed it over here after she had smeared all this nasty Vicks shit over it. She put the towel on it. She put the heating pad over it. And the next day, my symptoms had radically improved. Some old folk Italian medicine, maybe. I don't know if they had heating pads over there, but it worked. It really worked. I was deathly ill the day before and I was fine the next day. Now, I wouldn't go around telling everybody, well, that treatment saved my life and I won't fucking hear you say it doesn't work for you. No. If there was a scientific thing that said, well, actually, you probably just sweat a little bit and it wasn't really the heating pad and the towel and the Vicks and all that magic combination, then there was another logical reason for why all of that shit just broke up like that. And you were confined to a bed one day and you were up the next day, I'd be willing to accept that. If somebody said, well, I tried that method you told me that your grandmother used on you when you had a chest cold and it didn't do shit for me, I didn't even try it when I had COVID both times, and both times I had COVID, I was really fucking ill. I was out of my head mentally, too. But I wouldn't go into a temper tantrum. I wouldn't go into a rage. I wouldn't say to people, you better not question this thing, save my life, I think AA refuses questions because it knows it can't provide any answers under scrutiny. You can't, the one thing it can do is always duck and dodge, which is what AA is good at doing. If you question an old-timer really, really closely who says, well, I know what God wants for me today, well, how do you know that? How do you demonstrate that it's not just another voice in your head? How do you demonstrate to somebody like me who's standing out here that it's not the voice of God? You can't. Then they'll say, well, it's just a matter of faith or something like that. Yeah, faith is generally what people use when they don't have a good reason to believe something or a claim. But they're uneasy to be questioned, in my opinion, and they react with rage and violence when they are questioned because they know that this stuff will not hold up under scrutiny. They know that scientific research has been practically ruined in the field of addiction because of them. Believe it or not, there's a letter, and I don't have it in front of me, all the way back in 1964 in the Saturday Evening Post, the one with the, what was that painter's name? Rockwell, that showed all the homey, nice little towns, which turned into spooky little towns whenever you saw a Twilight Zone episode back then. But it said AA was doing a great disservice to scientific research. This was before AA became an institution, I might add. This is before AA snuggled up to all the politicians and became a massive money-making operation. This was before all of that. And it has practically put a strangle and kept us in the dark ages, a stranglehold, I meant to say, on any further endeavors in scientific research. It will bully and smear people and ruin them who speak out against it in the professional world. And it has kept us practically in the dark ages. It's kept us in the dark ages for a reason, because I'm going to say the summation of this video about being questioned. Truth is not afraid to be questioned. Truth is not afraid. If truth is, if there is something that is proven to be rather conclusively true and comports with the reality, question it all you want will not alter it. I shouldn't have said truth like it's an entity, a god, or a deity, or something like that, but I'm saying something is true. It can stand up to scrutiny. It can stand up to being questioned. I don't have to really have faith about, say, gravity, or I don't really have to have faith about when I was ill with COVID. I didn't need faith to realize that there was an illness inside of me that was eating up my immune system, okay? I didn't need it demonstrated for me by medicine, even though medicine was able to do that, and it left me with a fucked up hospital bill. But it doesn't need a demonstration. It exists outside of my own perception. It exists outside of my own personal experience that AA appeals to in a lot of situations. You ask an old timer, how do you know God took away your desire to drink? Well, it's been my personal experience. Well, truth and personal experience don't kind of belong in the same sentence in situations like that. You cannot prove that you had a metaphysical experience that removed your desire to drink, and you fucking know that on some level. You can't demonstrate that. I guarantee you, if I had some kind of demonstration that some mystical creature that exists beyond space and time was able to successfully reach its invisible hands into my head and pull out my desire to stop drinking, if I had some evidence that that existed, I'd be more than happy to present it. And I'd be more than happy to be interviewed and questioned, and even put under the microscope with that to say, well, maybe it was all in my imagination all along. So my question tonight for this video is, why are you so afraid, AA, of being questioned? Why are you so afraid of criticism? Why do you react with so much hatred and rage whenever somebody has something to say about your organization? Because if your organization has really saved millions of people, if your organization has really put you in direct contact with a higher power or a spirit of the universe or whatever the fuck it is you call it, and if the organization has really been able to do all these wonderful things and given people life beyond their wildest imaginations and dreams, why are you afraid to be questioned? Why won't you demonstrate it? Why do you make excuses for the people who fail? Why do you refer to a book that's riddled with logical fallacies? Why do you have to duck and dodge questions? If somebody said, I don't believe you're 47 years old, I wouldn't have to do a lot of excuse making. Well, I'm not 47 yet. We got to wait for November for that one. I wouldn't need to do a lot of ducking and making excuses and doing a lot of dancing around like a fighter in the ring there. I'd be more than happy to say, well, what do you want? You want my driver's license copy? You want my birth certificate copy? Do you want, what evidence do you need? You want my shit, I don't even know whoever it is now, but you want my high school yearbook, which would comport to the year that I said I was born in? If I could ever find it, but I tried to forget high school. But I don't have to worry about it. Why would I duck and dodge a situation that I know to be true? Why does AA need to do the same thing? So, yeah, I guess I could call this video Questions for AA. I didn't get to read a comment this week because this is actually a last-second video that I didn't know I was going to get time to make. Chime in the comments. Let me know your experiences whenever you question the program. If you just asked your sponsor a question, well, I did the third step and it didn't do anything. What did I do wrong? Did you get an honest instruction? Did you get a demonstration? Did you get someone that would say, well, let's take me through this step by step and let me tell you what I did step by step. Did you get that, or did you get it? Well, it's because you're not willing. It's because you're not honest. It's because you still want to drink. It's because you can't tell the true from the false because you're an alcoholic. Really strange behavior for people who claim to be living, walking, breathing miracles who are in contact with the universe above, whatever spirit the fuck it is. See you guys next week.